And just finally on Chinese-made EVs, a moment ago you said you're discouraging Canadians from buying one of the 49,000. Are you officially asking Canadians, Ontarians to boycott any of the 49,000 Chinese-made EVs that come to Canada?
That is exactly what I'm saying, Colin.
You don't have to like Doug Ford. You don't have to support Doug Ford. But he's right. Doug Ford, who lined up behind Mark Carney during the election, is now acting like a dumped ex who cannot believe he ever trusted the guy. Suddenly, Ford is sounding the alarm that Carney's China EV deal could be devastating for Canada's auto industry. All of this is happening while Carney's Liberals lecture Canadians to stop buying American and buy Canadian, even as their own policies invite a flood of cheap Chinese vehicles that threaten the very jobs and security that Carney claims to protect. Let's take a look.
Hello, good morning. My name is Brian Kingston. I'm the President and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Canada's auto industry is under enormous pressure as tariffs and trade uncertainty upend one of our most important economic sectors. Auto's importance to Canada and Ontario specifically cannot be overstated. The industry directly employs more than 125,000 people in vehicle assembly, parts, research, and development. An additional 370,000 people are employed in the aftermarket services and dealership networks. With over 90% of Canadian production destined for the United States, there is no industry without U.S. access and North American integration. Diversification is not an option for automotive, as markets in Europe and Asia are better served by assembly plants in those regions. Canada's market alone is too small to justify large-scale manufacturing. The future of Canada's auto industry and the hundreds of thousands of jobs that it supports depends on securing our trade relationship with the United States. This means the removal of the Section 232 tariffs and the renewal of CUSMA, or Trilateral Trade Agreement. Given these realities, the federal government's decision to open the Canadian market to Chinese EVs is deeply concerning. The Canada-China Strategic Partnership has the potential to undermine Canada's auto sector and presents risk to the future of our integrated North American automotive supply chain. As the Premier has outlined, it is critical that the federal government rectifies this situation by taking immediate action to bolster the competitiveness of the very companies that have been building cars and employing Canadians for over 100 years.
So this is interesting. So Premier Ford decided to come out and have the president of the Auto Workers Association, the president of the Auto Workers Union, and the Parts Manufacturing Association president come out because they can speak together as one unit on behalf of the workers and the companies that actually support the auto industry. And he's not happy, and they're not happy, and they shouldn't be happy. But this is where you have to shake your head as a Canadian at Doug Ford. Doug, you sat there supporting Prime Minister Carney. You chose to have a feud with Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, along with your buddy, Corey Teneycke. You decided to try and air all that dirty laundry, and it hurt his chances on actually becoming Prime Minister, where he would have protected the auto industry, where he wouldn't have sold out the auto industry to China. So this is what you asked for, Mr. Ford. And now you're trying to turn it around and say, oh, where's my pearls? Who could have predicted this? Right. That's the question, Ford. Who could have predicted this? Millions of Canadians predicted this. And that's why they voted for Pierre and the Conservatives. And that's why you have so many Ontarians not happy with you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin by thanking our guests. You just heard from Lana Payne, Unifor National President, Flavio Volpe, President of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, and Brian Kingston, President and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Together, Lana, Flavio, and Brian represent the workers, the automakers, and parts makers across the auto supply chain. This is an industry that employs 500,000 workers, many of them unionized, and contributes nearly $16 billion to Canada's economy. Together, we're sending a united message about the need to stand up in defense of Canada's economy, our auto workers, and workers across our great province. Over the last few days, we've watched as President Trump has threatened Greenland, he's threatened Canada, he's threatened NATO allies. President Trump remains relentless in his campaign to create a more unstable, unsafe, and uncertain world. There's never been a more important time for Team Canada to stay united. There's never been a more important time to deliver on our plan to protect Ontario. Last week, Prime Minister Carney announced a deal with China that will allow thousands of cheap, made-in-China electric vehicles into Canada's market. I've been clear about my concerns with this deal. By opening up our country to a flood of cheap, made-in-China vehicles, the federal government is asking Canadian auto workers to compete on unfair ground. We've seen what happens when cheap Chinese vehicles enter Western markets. Factories have closed, workers have lost their jobs. That's the risk this deal is creating right here in Ontario. In exchange for opening Canada up to this flood of cheap Chinese vehicles, the federal government got nothing, absolutely nothing in return for Canadian auto workers. And that's why we're here today. My focus and the focus of the leaders with me today is to find a solution that works for all Canadians. We need to find a path forward that protects Canadian auto workers and good-paying union jobs. Instead of importing vehicles, we should be making vehicles by Canadian workers, using Canadian steel, respecting Canadian specs and standards, leveraging Canada's supply chain.
So there's a bunch there. And no matter what you may think of Doug Ford, we always go to that age-old adage: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. What Carney has done when he came into power is he said, I'm going to consult with everybody. I'm going to be everybody's best friend. I'm not going to do anything without consulting anybody. And I'm going to bring all the premiers together and we're going to be Team Canada. All right, let's go. Well, what happened to that? And this is what Ford is saying. What happened to Team Canada? All we've been hearing from the Liberal government and all of the Liberal supporters is buy Canada, boycott the US. Well, what Carney has also said is we're going to build Canadian products using Canadian steel with Canadian jobs. Well, what the hell is this? To my knowledge, Canadian steel doesn't make Chinese cars. And definitely to my knowledge, Canadian jobs don't make Chinese cars. They're all made in China. And they're going to ship them over here. And this was actually talked about by Corey Tenike on one of the recent panels with CTV News that we covered. And he's right. And Ford is right. Because there is a pattern in Europe, Latin America, and other parts of the world where when Chinese vehicles enter the market, they are vastly, vastly cheaper than all of the other competition. So the competition can't compete. And how are they cheaper? Because they're selling it far below MSRP because of the amount that the Chinese Communist Party subsidizes them. So they can afford to effectively sell it at a loss in order to gain the market share. And what happens then? Well, if nobody buys the cars except from the Chinese folks, then there's no revenue going into these companies, and there's no reason to make cars, and there's no reason to keep these factories open. So you're talking about an industry that supports around 500,000 jobs. That's a lot. $16 billion for the economy. That's no chump change. So where's this Team Canada approach? Where's this elbows up? Where's this we're only going to do things that support buy Canadian steel. We're going to be our own best customer. Doesn't sound like it. Sounds like we're going to be China's best customer. And that doesn't really benefit Canada, now does it?
For Mark McAllister from City News. Just to follow up on that, you're very critical of Prime Minister Carney right now based on this deal with China. What did you make of his comments yesterday and his speech yesterday? He seemed to command the interest of the world in saying what he did yesterday, all the while you've been quite critical.
Well, I wouldn't say I was critical of the Prime Minister. I was very, very disappointed, as my colleagues behind me are very disappointed not to get a phone call, not to get a text message, and cutting a deal. And God bless the people in Saskatchewan. I love them out west, out east, in the fisheries. But the three of us, we have to take care of Ontario here. That's my number one job, to protect the people of Ontario, protect the jobs, protect communities, and that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Where's the consultation, Mr. Carney? Even to your buddy, Doug Ford, where we heard ad nauseum that you guys spent an evening at a cottage drinking and smoking cigars while Canadians are having to go to food banks. Where's your consultation first? Because according to Ford, you didn't talk to them at all about what you were going to go over to China and put forward. So where's the consultation? And notice Doug Ford tries to say, well, no, I'm not being critical. I'm just disappointed. And then goes on to criticize. And the reporters and the mainstream media are framing Carney's speech as expected that, this was a prime minister. He's the leader of the free world. Like, some people are actually saying that, which is kind of crazy. But this is the indictment on Mark Carney. But where do the Conservatives need to win? They need to win the GTA. That's where they need to win. There's over 50 Conservative seats in Ontario. That's a lot of Canadians that have voted for Conservatives in Ontario. Contrary to what a lot of people would have you believe. There's a lot of people in Eastern Canada that want a Conservative government and that voted for it and that were successful in electing their Conservative MP. But we need more. And what we don't need is more division. We need more people to be united, and we need more people supporting each other across this country, no matter where you live, in BC, in Yukon, in Iqaluit, or Cape Breton Island. We need to stop this infighting. We need to stop this name-calling, the fear-mongering, and everything in between, and we need to come together. Like them or not, that's how the Liberals win. You don't hear about them fighting with each other too much. You hear about this caucus rebellion, but as soon as an election happens, everything goes away. They know how to maintain that discipline, and they know how to keep it stowed. The Conservatives, across all of the different provinces and the different levels of government, they don't know how to do that. We need to figure it out. We need to figure it out right quick. So it's interesting that the guy who was singing his praises is now telling everybody, well, he doesn't consult with anybody. Who could have predicted that? The CEO with the ego bigger than Justin Trudeau doesn't want to consult with anybody? Could have fooled me.
Hi, Jessica from the Trillium. And this question is to anybody who'd like to answer it, including the Premier. Do you believe the Prime Minister has given up on an integrated Canada-US auto industry? And if so, is that reasonable given what President Trump has said and done?
Well, I hope he hasn't, and I haven't talked to him about it, but I truly believe they want to support the sector. That's my opinion. Did they go upon this deal in the wrong way? 1,000%. You can't just make deals and not consult with the four people standing here that work with the auto sector, work with the people on the floor. Lana goes around plants, and I know Brian does and Flavio does, talking to the frontline people. It gives them uncertainty. It gives them uncertainty as simple as saving enough money to maybe buy a home. Now they're concerned.
This is an interesting take because it says, I hope Carney hasn't given up on that. Well, as far as Mark Carney's concerned, it looks like he's given up on anything in the United States. And he's trying to paint Trump as the ultimate adversary, and along with that, all of the United States. This is what Canadians need to understand, is that Mark Carney will sacrifice any job that he can. He doesn't give a damn about the people it's actually going to affect in Canada, as long as he has his scapegoat to fearmonger Canadians to try to get a majority government. That's the play here. It started with him going to China, doing that deal. Then he followed that up with a speech in Davos, calling out, but not directly calling out the United States. And then Trump understandably said what he said. And now it's being framed as, Trump's saying that Canada wouldn't be alive if it weren't for the US. Well, he has a point. It's the largest economy in the world. And Mark Carney loves to say, well, China's our second largest trading partner. Yeah, it's by a factor of almost 20. It's not even close. If you remember the NATO chart I put up yesterday, where it showed the United States NATO spending and versus everybody else, that's what our trade relationship looks like. Over 80% of our trade is with the United States. Every other nation combined makes up the last 20%. It's not close. But that's what Mark Carney wants to throw away. And people will say, well, it's not Mark Carney in Canada that threw that away. It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has his part to play in this. Nobody's innocent here. And we don't agree with the tariffs being put on Canada. And we have a lot of problems with a lot of things Donald Trump has done. However, your job as a leader is to mend fences. And Carney seems poised to sacrifice as many Canadian jobs as he likes in order to hold on to power. And the crazy part is a lot of Canadians are eating it up. They're eating up these business speeches that he's giving. Oh, we're going to diversify our trade, and we just signed something with China, and they're our second largest trading partner. They don't know any of the details. And they don't know what's about to happen to this auto sector. They definitely don't know what's about to happen to the Canadian economy when all of that money leaves. That's a huge problem. Because remember, the money that you spend on these Chinese vehicles doesn't go to Canada. It leaves this country. Versus the money that you spend on autos that are in Canada, that are not made in China. They are going to serve local businesses, and they're going to serve local Canadian jobs. That's the big difference.
That's Melissa Shin from Bloomberg News. Jameson Greer, U.S. Trade Representative, was asked about the Canada-China trade deal on Bloomberg Television. He said, I am focused on the suggestion about Chinese investment into Canada and that kind of thing. I'm not sure that's healthy for the North American relationship, so we'll be looking at that. What's your reaction to those remarks?
I've met Jameson Greer, very smart individual, was part of the last USMCA. If there was anyone that understands the auto sector, it's Jameson, and I agree with him. It's harmful to the North American auto market, no matter if it's Canada, the US, or Mexico.
Okay, and a follow-up for anyone who wants to answer this. One of the reasons that some consumers are very excited about the Chinese EVs is the low price. What can the Canadian auto industry do to improve affordability for Canadian-made electric cars?
Well, first of all, get rid of the emissions mandate. Make sure that the federal government is supporting and funding technology and supporting our auto workers. And, something at what cost? Maybe a few people might buy them, and I discourage anyone from buying a Chinese vehicle. But if they decide to do that, at what cost? Is it at the cost of your neighbor down the street that's working in the auto sector that he's not going to have or she's not going to have a job? You got to look at more of a Team Canada approach, and wherever they're working, if they went and outsourced their jobs, they wouldn't be too happy. So, folks, this is time to band together, Team Canada. That's what we need to focus on. Take care of each other. Well, we're being attacked on two fronts. We're being attacked by China. We're being attacked by Trump. This is all the more reason we have to diversify our trade to countries that we're doing great work with. I'll give you an example. Volkswagen in Germany. Hopefully Germany can come or Volkswagen or a German car can come and manufacture here. They built the fourth largest building in the world, 16 million square feet in St. Thomas. Or Korea, where Hyundai and Kia are selling 220,000 vehicles into Canada. Come and invest. We'll support you. That's what we need to do. Start diversifying and stop relying on their American friends so much.
And just finally on Chinese-made EVs, a moment ago you said you're discouraging Canadians from buying one of the 49,000. Are you officially asking Canadians, Ontarians, to boycott any of the 49,000 Chinese-made EVs that come to Canada?
That is exactly what I'm saying, Colin.
Punch in there. So number one, Doug Ford agrees with an American. Stop the presses, everybody. It's almost like some of the Americans know what they're talking about. This is what we've been saying. Whether or not you love or hate Trump, he's temporary. The American market is not. It is here to stay. Why the heck would you walk away from that? It's just silliness. And he says, yeah, China entering the North American EV market, that's a big problem for the auto industry. And it's not just a big problem for the auto industry, folks. It is a big problem from a security standpoint. We've said this before. There's vast concern from all over the world about the Chinese-made vehicles. We've already talked about this the other day, but just to reinforce, Huawei had their phones banned in North America and by Android and Google and all the other platforms because of the spyware that was in them. Was recording your data and shipping it all back to China. The same thing is happening with the cars. And people will say, oh, well, that's just fear-mongering. Is it? Well, it's not just Canadians saying it, and it's not just the US saying it. Israel. China's big brother is watching how Chinese smart devices are spying inside Israel. It may sound like a Netflix thriller, but it's real. Chinese smart devices are sending user data to Beijing. Israel is only now responding, halting a defense ministry tender for Chinese cars amid warnings over Beijing's powerful data intel abilities. From the United Kingdom, Chinese EVs pose data security risks, UK defense firms warn. British firms working with the UK's military and intelligence services are urging employees not to connect their mobile phones to Chinese-made electric vehicles, the iPaper reported on Monday. In March alone, more than 25,000 new Chinese vehicles were sold in the UK, with BYD, MG, and Polestar among the top-performing Chinese brands in the market. Norway's public buses have a Chinese backdoor no one knew about. A new safety review revealed the buses contain an SD card that allows the Chinese manufacturer remote access. Expanding on that, The discovery comes out of Router, the nation's largest public transport operator. It uncovered the potential security risk during a secret test inside of its own sealed facility. Cyber check or cause for alarm? During the investigation, it tested a Dutch-built bus along with a Chinese one. Those from Yutong, a Chinese manufacturer, had Romanian SIM cards hidden inside the system. According to Yutong, those SIM cards enable remote software updates and technical troubleshooting. While that may be true, the connection also gives Yutong the theoretical power to stop the buses or render them inoperable via a software update. This is not conspiracy theory, folks. This is real. And this is the concern. This is what we talked about the other day. Imagine the data that these cars that are constantly connected to the internet are sending back to China. Imagine all the data they would be getting off of your phone. All of the conversations that car is listening to. They'll know everything about you, everything on your phone, where you go, what you've been doing, what your movement patterns are. It gets very frightening very quick. So you don't have to like Doug Ford. You don't have to support Doug Ford. But he's right. These Chinese vehicles are very, very dangerous to Canadians, both to our economy and to our national security and to your personal privacy. For those three reasons, we're big enough to admit that on this case, we completely agree with Doug Ford. And we agree on his indictment of Mark Carney making this deal. What happened to Buy Canadian, Mark Carney? What happened to your Davos speech where you told everybody that you shouldn't be entering indentured servitude to a superpower? Well, China is the most dangerous superpower on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And the last thing that we need to do is to get closer to them and move away from our best friend who's just to the south. As I said, whether you like or don't like Trump, the President of the United States is always temporary. The American people and that economy, that's there to stay. And it would be the biggest mistake this country has ever made to turn our back on them.